Hello and welcome to the Outside the Cockpit pre-race show for the Hungarian Grand Prix. I'm Sam Donzik, joined by TJ here again. How are you doing today, TJ?
Doing really good. Looking forward to a great race weekend.
Yes, indeed. I'm excited too. Back to racing. Red Bull versus Mercedes. The drama intensifies. It's round 11. Speaking of drama, let's just talk about how far Red Bull went into their eccentric search, because I think it was a whole interesting factor. It's like, okay, they've lost, the appeal from the FIA, and now they're doing all these crazy things. And one of the things they did is they got Alex Albon, a former Red Bull driver, to recreate Lewis Hamilton's racing line on lap 1 during their Silverstone filming day. They actually did that. That was reported news. And I just thought that was absolute crazy. And they wanted to use it as their evidence to the court, I guess, to the FIA to make their appeal more. But it's like, okay, that's just if you've got to recreate something, like that's what they call fabricating evidence, I think.
That's really what it was. I mean, they could have also, they could have done so many other things. They didn't have to just recreate the exact thing, the exact same line that Hamilton took through. I think it was Copse.
Yeah, through Copse corner.
It was through Copse. So, I mean, they obviously saw what happened to Charles Leclerc with a couple laps to go. And they saw that Lewis took the exact same line. So, a lot of people were making such a big deal about the Alex Albon film day and the telemetry they presented from that test or filming day or whatever it was. And they could have just showed the Hamilton's overtake on Charles Leclerc, and they could have maybe used that might have given them some extra leeway, but they decided to recreate something which immediately makes things look fishy.
Yes, it does. It just makes like, oh, let's just make it look this way, because it's like, okay, how are you can't exactly recreate someone's line in a race. Like that's every time like a racing driver takes a line, it's a little bit different each lap. It might be very similar because they have their certain lines that they always go and do and stuff as drivers have, but it's not going to be the same exact lap because it's not Lewis Hamilton driving the car. It's not like he hopped in a Red Bull like, yeah, sure, I'll do this for you guys, But,
and it was a 2-year-old Red Bull anyway, because that's what the rules permit for filming days and all that. But then also the situation was different. Alex Albon was just doing basically a hot lap, whereas Lewis Hamilton, that was the first lap of a Grand Prix, and the driving style is completely different when you're on one, colder tires, and then you're racing alongside someone wheel to wheel. So it was a completely different situation. And Red Bull say that they had pre-planned this filming day, whether or not, fair enough. And, whether they did or not is, it doesn't really matter. But even though they pre-planned it with Alex Albon, they still decided to tell him, hey, do this, instead of just letting him go around and drive and whatnot. So that, it, like I said earlier, it just seems super, super suspicious, and when they really didn't have to use that at all.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. I agree. I think as well in terms of, I think they just took things too far. They stepped over the line in terms of like what is permittable to, like, you can totally go to the FIA during the race and say like, hey, this is what happened. He got a 10-second penalty and he still won the race. And it's like, no, that's not good enough. We're gonna plea that. Like it's like, no, he got a 10-second penalty. He beat the system. He won the race. Good for him. It's over. It happened. It's in the past. But they're like, nope, we got to keep going. Now, what's interesting as well is Mercedes released this statement, which I'm now just going to quick pull up. They just released the statement on Instagram here. So this is the statement that read here. It said, the Mercedes-AMG Petronas F1 team welcomes the decision of the stewards to reject Red Bull Racing's right of review. In addition to bringing this incident to a close, we hope that the decision will mark the end of a concerted attempt by the senior management of Red Bull Racing to tarnish the good name of sporting integrity of Lewis Hamilton, including the documents submitted for their unsuccessful right of review. We now look forward to going racing this weekend and continuing to our hard-fought competition for the 2021 FIA Formula One Championship. What do you make of this statement that Mercedes has put out here on Instagram? What are your thoughts on this statement?
Yeah, I actually have it pulled up here on Twitter as well. Because Mercedes, what they did was, as part of this whole thing, they also released the official document released by the FIA in regards to the incident in question. So, I mean, obviously, I mean, it's a very strongly worded statement. Obviously, there's no denying that. And, you know, they're saying Red Bull's trying to tarnish Lewis Hamilton's name and his sporting integrity. But I mean, it was really weird to begin with. I mean, they put out the statement, and fair enough, and they said that they've moved on, and so has Christian Horner. They said that in today's press conference earlier today, in the team principal's press conference. Mm-hmm. But I mean, Red Bull's famously known for, you know, for harsh ideas and harsh words and harsh comments and things like that. But this also does seem a little bit harsh from Mercedes as well. They claim that Red Bull is trying to tarnish Lewis Hamilton's name and reputation when, I mean, clearly this wasn't that. I mean, the incident itself, you know, it was clearly just, you know, some people call it a racing incident. Some people say, you know, Hamilton shouldn't have deserved a penalty, and whatever you think of that incident, fair enough. But I mean, to sort of fight fire with fire is not really how Mercedes do things. They never really have any strong words. So this was a big surprise that they claimed Red Bull was doing this at all.
Yeah, this is really surprising from Mercedes because, like, you know, sometimes Mercedes is they're really funny. They're admin and stuff. They post a lot of funny things, and that's what they're kind of known for. But this is a very serious statement, and they're fighting back. And you can't fight fire with fire. It would have been better for them to say, okay, listen, we totally accept that they want to appeal the rejection and stuff, but we feel that it's unnecessary, and we just want to move on from the incident. Because if you keep talking about it, keep bringing it up, Red Bull's just going to be like, okay, clearly they're not over it, so we're not over it. So it's going to keep going back and forth, and it's just going to lead to more on-track problems or off-track problems as well. Because now we go into the Hungarian Grand Prix this weekend, and we don't know what's going to happen on track. Not saying that, and again, both drivers, I think, they're not going to put any other driver in harm because they wouldn't want to do that. Not saying that will happen, but tensions get high. We've seen teammates crash before. We've seen title competitors crash out before multiple other times in previous years. So it's like we could maybe see another big crash. Not saying we will, but it's a possibility, and you don't want to have that chance. And for them to say they're tarnishing the good name of, like, you know, Lewis Hamilton, like you said as well, I think that's a little bit far-fetched. And I think they're kind of just you know, digging a little bit too deep into the situation on both sides between Red Bull and Mercedes. And that's kind of how you have to look at it, because I think based on the way that Red Bull respond, Mercedes is like, okay, we've got to respond in a similar fashion to, you know, keep up with, you know, how silly, you know, or how ridiculous can get, really. That's what we come down to. It's how ridiculous this can get. So,
yeah. I mean, the whole thing sort of was ridiculous anyway. I mean, if you look back to the incident, I mean, a lot of people saying that, okay, it should have been a racing incident because, I mean, yes, you sort of see Christian Horner's point where you don't stick a wheel up the inside at Copse, and there was further room for Hamilton to hit the apex and whatnot. But I mean, for it to descend into something like this, it was always going to happen. Something was always going to become a flashpoint in the fight for a world championship. I mean, the last time we sort of saw this sort of like really crazy incident lead to, you know, a war of words almost was in 2017 when Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton made contact behind the safety car in Azerbaijan. That really shook everybody up, and even myself. You know, you just don't see incidents like that, like what Vettel did. You know, driving alongside him and turning in and hit Hamilton. You don't see that ever, and then that just set in that just opened a whole can of worms with Seb saying, Seb sort of not addressing the incident and saying that, oh, you know, Formula One's for grown-ups, and, you know, Hamilton should have been more careful. Like, really? You don't say those kind of things at all. And it was just a very similar situation here with the whole war of words between Red Bull and Mercedes and Christian Horner and Toto Wolff. It feels like deja vu. I mean, this is not new to Formula One by any stretch of the imagination. This, since, you know, war of words has been going on since Formula One started. So, I mean, this is nothing new, but it's still really unfortunate to see it to descend into this kind of farce.
No, I 100% agree with you. And I think with this statement as well, they're adding more fuel to the fire. And it's just what they should have said is like, no, we're just, we're going to be the bigger team and just kind of move past this. And we're not going to make a big fuss about it. But because they decide to make a big fuss of it, it's not going to create more problems kind of further down the road and stuff. And it's just going to be interesting to see what happens in the next coming weeks and stuff. Because obviously after the Hungary Grand Prix, they have now a 3-week break. It's like the summer break. We might see some driver moves and stuff happening, maybe not, but we'll just kind of keep up with that as well. And then they'll return as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's taken away from a really exciting championship battle. I mean, before Silverstone, I mean, even now after Silverstone, I mean, it was always close between Red Bull and Mercedes and Hamilton and Verstappen. And this whole thing is just really taken away from that. It's sort of left us feeling with like I don't know about you, but it's left me feeling with like a dirty taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I can somewhat agree. It is distracting from the point of this whole competition is to determine, the F1 champion, who is the best, driver of the world, who is the current, who is the Constructors' Championship, who is and that's what we want to focus on, that fight between the two. But this little side fight is just really going to turn into a whole big drama of an episode of Drive to Survive next season. That's all we really know about it. It's just going to be an episode on Drive to Survive, which I'm super excited to see because, obviously that would be great. But in terms of the actual racing, it does take it away from the natural part of racing, which would like to see the competition between these two. And honestly, to be fair, honestly, I think this incident was inevitable. If it wasn't going to happen at Silverstone, it was going to happen at Hungary or another race because it was just bound to happen. And I think as well, when you look at it, both drivers neither wanted to give in because each driver could have given the other person space and the other person would have gone by. And that just would have been the end of it. But no one wanted to do that because they know, okay, you know what, there's a 30-point gap. Lewis wanted to make an aggressive move. He did make an aggressive move, some may say, because, he needed to for the championship. I'm saying, like, he did need to. He was 30-plus points down. He needed to make a aggressive move and stuff to go for the championship, and he did that. But regardless, let's move on to our qualifying predictions for this weekend. Who do you have sitting on pole position? Well, I know we had the sprint qualifying last weekend, but now we're back to the regular qualifying format. So who do you have taking pole position?
Well, it's hard to go outside Lewis Hamilton here. This is a track he does really well at. He's won so many times here. He's done very well here, even from his first season at McLaren in 2007. He's done very well here. The only reason he was sort of denied pole was because of a dirty trick played on him by Fernando Alonso. So, I mean, it's hard to go past, it's hard to go past Lewis Hamilton here going on pole.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, like, as much as I don't want to seem like, but I don't know. Like Max Verstappen does seem to have a lot of pace and stuff. But after watching practice, I think the Mercedes just are very dominant. After practice 2, is Mercedes 1-2. I know the Alpines are looking really strong as well. So I'm not saying they're going to get pole position, but I'm saying in terms of total qualifying position, I think they will finish up high in the qualifying grid for the race on Sunday. But in terms of pole position, I think, I can definitely see Lewis Hamilton riding off the momentum from the big home win to go to the Hungary Grand Prix, which is pretty much like his second home Grand Prix because he wins there so often. The fans probably like him there so much, at least the Mercedes fans there in Hungary like him so much, obviously, because he does win there so much. So I think that's going to be a solid for pole position. Second place, I can definitely see Max Verstappen starting on the front row alongside Lewis Hamilton. And then I wouldn't be surprised maybe if Charles Leclerc or Lando Norris gets up there for third as well. Like, you can't get over Valtteri Bottas or Sergio Perez, but Lando Norris, after 10 races, is still third in the championship. So credit to Lando Norris. He has been, like, milking everything he can out of that McLaren. Now, it's a great car as well, but regardless, he's been doing a great job. So that's kind of my qualifying predictions for the top 3. Let's move on to race predictions. So obviously, now that we just talked about qualifying, based on that qualifying grid, who do you have finishing on the podium for the race on Sunday?
I mean, it's hard to go past the usual suspects of Hamilton, Verstappen, and Bottas because they've been so dominant, and Sergio Perez has had a bit of issues in terms of form lately. As far as who's going to win, I'm going for Verstappen because he needs to respond from the mishap at Silverstone. Well, I won't say mishap, but the crash at Silverstone.
Yeah.
And he has been getting the better of Hamilton from time to time at the starts this year, whether it be from like the start of the race. He's been getting really good starts. So, it's going to be really, really interesting to see how Verstappen can get the start get the jump on Hamilton at the start, because the Hungaroring is a track where it's really hard to overtake. So I mean, this race is really all about the starts and the strategy. So if Verstappen can get the better start, then he has, he's already got good advantage over Hamilton at that point. So based on that, I'm going Verstappen, Hamilton, and then Bottas, because I mean, yes, this may be a Red Bull track because it'll suit their higher downforce car, but I mean, Bottas is really fighting for his future at Mercedes right now. So
he is, yes.
He's not going to let anybody through if he can.
Not even Lewis Hamilton. I mean, like maybe Lewis Hamilton, because he wants to keep his seat, because I feel like if he fights Lewis Hamilton, he's going to be in the doghouse and he's going to lose his seat to George Russell. But like some people might say that George Russell won't be joining Mercedes until after Lewis Hamilton leaves, But anyways, that's the time for a different. In terms of my race predictions, I have Max Verstappen winning the race. He's going to bounce back after, again, like you said, his little race incident at Silverstone. He's really great on the starts. Like, he's been really, like, you look at Imola, you look at even like as well Silverstone, he started on pole. He had a great start. Obviously, it ended up in crash, but regardless, he did have a great race start. He's really good right off the bat. Has a lot of pace. You look at all his dominant race wins that he's had this season, all 5 of them. He's gotten a great start, which is obviously kind of one of his best abilities that he has. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a great start. But again, this is crucial. This comes down to strategy. It doesn't matter if he gets pole position or if Lewis Hamilton gets pole position. And we saw as well in 2019 when Red Bull screwed up the strategy and Mercedes they did the 2-stop strategy. They ended up coming out on fresher tires, and he just pretty much passed them at a certain point because like Max was a sitting duck. So I don't want to see that happen again, because we saw it earlier happen at Barcelona. It seems like Red Bull have learned their lesson from that incident, but I think strategy is going to play a huge part in this. So I wouldn't be surprised. But my top 3 for the podium would be Verstappen, Hamilton, and I'm going to say Lando Norris. Actually, I'm going to say Lando Norris is going to get a podium at. I think he's going to do solid. He's going to do really well. He's got a lot of pace. I got to respect him. He's really matured as a driver. He's shown a lot of pace, and I'm super excited to see what he can do for in Formula One inside for the rest of the season as well. Because I think you can only really go up from here. I think with the way that the McLaren car is developing, he definitely could be a race winner sometime this year or even next year as well.
Well, that also depends on how the teams develop next year's car.
No, exactly. Yeah, that is huge as well. And what's interesting as well, speaking of just development, I think it was 2 teams. It was Williams and I think it was Williams or Alfa Romeo, and they were saying that they were going to focus on 2021 or 2022 developments mainly. So they're just going to stop. They're going to pretty much stop doing upgrades on this year's car, and then just mainly focus on next year's car. I believe it was I think it was those 2 teams. We can double check that. Let's move on to drivers to watch for. For me personally, some drivers to watch for. I don't want to give like the usual suspects of watch Verstappen, watch Hamilton. We all know they're going to be great. But I'm really excited to see how Pierre Gasly will do, because he was still in a good position during practice and stuff. He had some high finishes around like 5th and 6th in terms of the practice session. So I think I'm excited to see how he'll do. Another driver is Fernando Alonso. The Alpine has been running really well at the Hungarian Ring from practice, as we've seen. And I'm just excited to see what is left in the tank for the Spaniard, to see how well he'll do. That's another driver I'm watching for. And then the third driver I'm watching for is Daniel Ricciardo, because he's come into form of late for McLaren. He's had a bit of a slow start to the season, but he's bounced back. He's picked up his legs again. He's gotten up. He's picked up a bit of the pieces, and he's starting to form again into the kind of the driver that we saw at Red Bull, which was this high fuel, high powered racing machine who's got this killer instinct and stuff. So those are my drivers to watch for. What about you?
Well, for me, you obviously mentioned Fernando Alonso. I'm interested to see how Esteban Ocon will perform this weekend. He finished 4th in second practice, and he shows that like alongside Fernando Alonso that Alpine is really quick, and it is capable of delivering good results. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. But for me, also the 2 Ferrari drivers, Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, they were really impressive in practice 1. Practice 2, they sort of fell off when the conditions became a lot hotter, and Carlos Sainz did say that that Ferrari are vulnerable in the heat after a strange Friday at the Hungaroring, but the Ferrari is capable of producing results, especially at tracks where it's difficult to overtake and high downforce that are high downforce. You look at Monaco, you look at Baku as well. Leclerc got pole position in both.
I mean, to be fair, Baku, they did struggle a bit in terms of actual race pace there. So that was a little bit different. And again, that was early on. So, but it will be interesting to see nonetheless how Ferrari does. And I think they could definitely show some great pace.
Yeah, this is like a high downforce track as well. And they surprised everyone at Monaco when they did really well in qualifying. Yes, it was because of a crash that Leclerc got pole and he ultimately didn't start the race, but Sainz ended up getting P2. So, I mean, that really does suit the Ferrari, the high downforce tracks. So, I mean, hopefully if they can get to the bottom of their issues with the heat, then they could do really well this weekend.
And it all depends on weather as well, because if the track isn't particularly too hot, if it's around, let's say, like 35 to 40 degrees, maybe around there, then like, okay, we kind of have this is the perfect temperature where we can do well. We can run the softs and maybe go to mediums. It's most likely going to be a two-stop race. It depends on if people start on the softs and then they go to hards, or if they start on the mediums as well, because they do have the tire choice. So this is where the Q2 rule comes into play. It's like, okay, how do you want to start the race? Do you want to start on softs or do you want to start on mediums? Let's move on finally to our 3-word race predictions. If you were to predict what's going to happen this weekend in 3 words, what would those 3 words be, TJ?
Business as usual. I mean, I think everyone's just sort of calmed down now from the last race at Silverstone with everything that happened and whatnot. So I think everyone's going to keep their sort of egos in check and their elbows in a little bit, at least, not at the start. Once the race progresses, everyone will sort of behave themselves. At least hopefully they do. So for me, it's going to be business as usual.
I'm going to say I would say from my 3-word race prediction, I'd say FIA has a quiet day or quiet times for FIA. Hopefully they have a quiet day at the office. Hopefully there's not too many issues where they're emailing the FIA to certain things and stuff. It was interesting as well. It was funny, I saw a meme actually about this where it was, it was like during the red flag situation. Where it was like, oh, Toto was talking to George, like, okay, quick, make me a PowerPoint. It's like, oh, Michael, I'm sending you an email. It's like, yes, that's exactly what they needed him for. It's like, he sends him a PowerPoint presentation of how this is all the data and stuff, and this is how Lewis Hamilton should have, not be given a penalty and stuff. So I just thought that was funny. But those are my 3-word race predictions. I think another one would be, I know Lewis Hamilton is back, or Lewis Hamilton back on top, just to see if he can get some mojo back, because if he wins again, he will, take a lead in the championship. I think Max Verstappen would have to finish second or below. I think it'd be pretty tight though. I think the 7-point gap between them is between between first and second, or the 8-point gap?
It's an 8-point gap, yeah.
8-point gap, yeah, sorry. So I think if Verstappen were to get the fastest lap, then I think he would still hold the lead by 1 point then, technically.
Yeah.
So he would have to get second place. But anyways, that will do it for our show. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out theintermissionsports.com for more content. And be sure to check out our post-race show Sunday afternoon after the Grand Prix is over. We'll be recapping everything that has happened in Hungary, all the drama included as well. Hopefully there'll be lots of drama, but not, too much drama. Anyways, I'm Sam Dodds. He's TJ here. Have a nice long weekend.